In today's video, we're going to talk about a movie I grew up loving so much I could quote almost the entire script from memory. The line, "Your mother was a snowblower," became one of my go-to jabs, despite the fact that it made no sense when directed towards a fellow human. The song "Who's Johnny" became integrated into my subconscious to the point that it still gets stuck in my head upon occasion to this very day. "Who's Johnny?" she said, and smiled in her special way. "Johnny," she said, "I know I love you." However, watching Short Circuit as an adult, I can't say I found as much magic in it as I did back then, and the cheesy pop 80s tune definitely doesn't hit the way it used to. Nevertheless, there is something special about the movie that I want to highlight. How it dared to take a common 80s sci-fi theme about the dangers of artificial intelligence and turn it on its head. And above all, despite its hyper-sweet screwball tone and bizarre casting decisions, I want to explain why Short Circuit is absolutely a sci-fi classic.
Target located, elevation 16 degrees, fire.
Holy moly!
During a demonstration of a new autonomous military robot series, lightning strikes the robot Saint Number 5, causing what appears to be a malfunction. Number 5 quickly escapes from its facility and refuses to be shut down. Hiding from a military now intent on destroying him before he can do any damage to the civilian population, Number 5 finds a friend in Stephanie, a warm-hearted young woman with a penchant for taking in strays. Number 5 and Stephanie seek the help of the robot's designer Newton Crosby, but will he hold to his belief that a machine can never rise above its circuits and programming, or will he realize that life is not a malfunction? In the early 1980s, the USC graduate Brent Maddock enrolled in an advanced screenwriting extension class at UCLA, where he polished up a script he had written with his friend S.S. Wilson about a military robot gaining sentience. At the end of the class, each student had to read their script aloud, and Maddock's script so impressed one of his classmates that it was passed along to the producer David Foster, the man behind movies like McCabe and Mrs. Miller and John Carpenter's The Thing. Foster was equally impressed and agreed to produce the film with his production partner Lawrence Terman, and the only director they ever seriously considered was John Badham, who had previously directed the hit films Saturday Night Fever, Blue Thunder, and most importantly, War Games. Foster and Terman consulted with Steven Spielberg on the production, who liked the script so much he would go on to hire Maddock and Wilson to rework the script for the long-gestating and similarly themed Batteries Not Included, which I'll undoubtedly cover in a future video. When Badham mentioned his desire to avoid stop motion, which was the initial plan, Spielberg also pointed them in the direction of special effects icon Douglas Trumbull, who had developed a short film as part of his sales pitch for his proprietary showscan technology called Let's Go. The short featured a robot named Pal that was designed by Eric Allard.
Oh no! I forgot my lines, and I don't mean dialogue. Someone help your boy out!
Based on this, Allard was hired to conceive the robots for Short Circuit, work on their logistics, and figure out how to integrate them into a feature film. Allard's sketches and outlines were then passed on to Sid Mead, who was responsible for the final design of the robots. Ultimately, 17 robots were made for the production, along with a few isolated arms and hands for close-ups, at the cost of $3 million, a massive chunk of the film's $15 million budget. This episode was voted on by my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to vote on future topics like this one, get early ad-free versions of my videos, or just wish to help keep this channel viable as YouTube ad revenue gets increasingly stingy and the copyright bots get increasingly hostile, please consider joining my Patreon or becoming a channel member. I'd like to give a special shout out to my $8 patrons: Batty Bat Firebrand, Chuck Poor, Diane McGill Davis, Don Quixote, Given Chumley DDF, Jack Blair, John Burrell, Mike O'Connor, Numinous 2019, Patrick Baker, Robert McGill, Sean Vale, Spoats, TB Schromick, Tracy Rothmyers, and Warren Davis. Thank you so much for your support. Allegedly, the casting of the two human leads was down to studio mandate rather than director's choice. And so the highly marketable Steve Guttenberg, riding high off the successes of the Police Academy movies and Cocoon, was cast as the supposedly socially stunted Newton Crosby. Alongside Guttenberg as the animal-loving Stephanie Speck was Brat Pack alumnus Ali Sheedy, who had worked with Badham before on War Games. Of the two, I think Sheedy is a better fit for her role, whereas Guttenberg is a woeful miscast that leads to a confusing character that doesn't act the way the script repeatedly tells us he should.
Originally, I had non-military purposes in mind. I designed it as a marital aid.
However, that's not the casting decision that would cause the most controversy. It was the secondary character of Ben, originally written as a vanilla sidekick without much to distinguish him as a character, that became the movie's lasting albatross. In the beginning, Fisher Stevens, who hadn't been in much beyond the cult sci-fi flicks The Brother from Another Planet and My Science Project at the time, was cast but later dropped out. Then, as they were considering Bronson Pinchot, they decided to spice up the character to include an ethnic angle, much like Pinchot had done for his rude French character in Beverly Hills Cop. Negotiations with the actor fell apart, though, and Stevens was brought back in, at which point, for reasons that have seemingly been lost to time, the character was turned into an Indian, even though he says he's from Bakersfield.
Where are you from, anyway?
Bakersfield originally.
No, I mean your ancestors.
Oh, damn. Pittsburgh.
Stevens spent 5 weeks in India to prepare for the role, and allegedly his performance was so convincing that many Indian audiences were convinced Ben was played by the Bollywood actor Javed Jaffari, a rumor that Jaffari himself had to publicly squash a few years later. Both Stevens and director John Badham have since apologized for the use of potentially offensive ethnic stereotypes in the film, claiming they would never do such a thing today. Other notable actors include Badham's former classmate Austin Pendleton as Dr. Howard Marner, another Police Academy regular G.W. Bailey as the ridiculously named Captain Scroder,
It's scrotum?
Scroder.
Brian McNamara as Frank, and John Badham himself in a small cameo as this cameraman. As for the lead robot, number 5, aka Johnny, the plan at the start had been to dub over his lines in post with a recognizable voice actor like Robin Williams. However, the puppeteer who voiced Johnny on set, Tim Blaney, did such a good job, they decided to keep his voice in the final film.
Malfunction.
Oh, you can talk.
Malfunction. Need input.
Filming began in early September 1985 in Astoria, Cascade Locks, and Portland, Oregon, including at the Bonneville Dam east of the city, as well as at Disney Ranch and Vasquez Rocks County Park near Santa Clarita in Southern California. Finally, the interior sets were done at Laird International Studios in Culver City. The shoot went remarkably smoothly due to the work of Eric Allard and the robotics team. The robots were, of course, not actually autonomous, but controlled by complicated puppetry, with a lot of simple movie magic tricks to hide their limitations, such as close-up shots for fine motor movements, isolated arm shots, air hoses for lightning-quick page-turning, and sped-up shots for some of the most complicated sequences. There were surprisingly few breakdowns, and even when one of the robots would malfunction, it could easily be swapped out with another in a matter of minutes, something that couldn't be done so efficiently with the human actors. Probably the most challenging bit was Johnny's dance scene, which includes a fun nod to Badham's own Saturday Night Fever, as it was added to the script very late in the production, without anyone bothering to consult the robotics team about whether or not it would even be possible. To their credit, they made it work. Oh, and as a fun side note, the sound effect of Johnny's laser is the same as the warm-up of the proton packs from Ghostbusters. Finally, I've gotten a useful bit of trivia from IMDb. The script featured Dire Straits' Money for Nothing as the song Johnny is obsessed with, but when the rights to the song proved too expensive, they instead went with El DeBarge's Who's Johnny, which reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot R&B Singles chart. Who's Johnny, she said, and smiled in her special way. No official soundtrack for the movie was ever released, and the score by David Shire wasn't made available until 2008. Short Circuit released in May of 1986 to a lukewarm critical response that praised some of the technical aspects of bringing a robot to life, but decried its juvenile humor and cutesy tone. However, it proved to be a big hit with audiences, raking in over $40 million gross in its initial domestic run, and becoming the following year's most popular video rental, which likely doubled its profits. It got a sequel in Short Circuit 2, which I might cover if this video does well enough, a European exclusive video game, a strange educational short film in the early 90s, and seemingly endless talk of a remake that never seems to go anywhere. But Short Circuit's most lasting legacy is with people of my generation who grew up with fond memories of Johnny 5. When I mentioned to some of my friends that my reaction to the movie as an adult was less than glowing, I was warned under no uncertain terms to be careful not to insult a critical piece of their childhoods. So, with that in mind, I'll try to refrain from being too critical, because at the end of the day, this movie was clearly made for younger audiences, and when I was younger, like I said, this was easily one of my favorite movies of all time. What I will discuss, however, is what it means for the subgenre of artificial intelligence in sci-fi. Short Circuit, like almost any story involving robots, has been accused of ripping off Isaac Asimov, specifically the story Robot AL-76 Goes Astray. But having read the story, I don't think there's much of a direct link. However, I will say that Short Circuit, like most of Asimov's robot stories, distinguishes itself from mainstream attitudes about artificial intelligence in its optimism. In a genre stuffed with Terminators and world-dominating supercomputers, Short Circuit dares to show a self-aware robot that believes in peace and harmony as logical ways to view the world.
Programming says destroy, is disassemble, make dead. Number 5 cannot. Is wrong, incorrect.
This is especially remarkable given that the director, John Badham, along with star Ali Sheedy, had, just a few years earlier, scared us all with the possibility of computer-controlled World War III. Although, now that I think about it, the ending of War Games, in which the computerized Joshua realizes there is no way to win at global thermonuclear war, falls pretty much in line with the optimistic ideals of Short Circuit. And I think that kind of optimism is much needed today, because many people are legitimately worried about the growth of AI technology, despite its grandiose potential for applications that could forever change the world for the better. I don't talk about it as much as I probably should, but I've grown up to become a science fiction writer, and looking back on the things that inspired me as a kid, Short Circuit informed my worldview more than The Terminator, while The Terminator probably taught me more about good storytelling. Even though I've always been a fan of horror, I was reading Dean Koontz and H.P. Lovecraft when my peers were still reading Judy Blume, I was also equally drawn to the idealism of things like Star Trek, with its own Asimov-inspired robot, Data. All of this is a roundabout way of saying I owe a lot to Short Circuit, a movie I might find cloyingly saccharine and narratively clunky as an adult, but which wormed its way into my developing brain at a young age. Sometimes we need a bit of cheerful hopefulness to keep the cynicism at bay, and we could all use a reminder of what it really means to be alive.
Not malfunction, Stephanie. Number 5 is alive.
And that's all for this year, my fellow Earthlings. What's your favorite movie robot, and why would it be anything but Robbie? Give me your answers in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to smack those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll see the return of a three-headed alien nemesis, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
Hey, Laser Lips! Your mama was a snowblower!